Good morning, Ollie. I said, good morning, Ollie. I gotta go to work. See ya. Hello and welcome to another edition of Mr. Level reading Shakespeare with cats. I'm Mr. Level. That was one of my cats. We'll see the others here in a second. You know, I've been thinking a lot lately as I spend time at home with the cats about a question my friend once asked me about cats and about their nature. He asked if I thought that cats really loved me or if they actually just want to murder me. If they actually are just like tigers and lions. They're no different from big cats in their intentions. The only difference is they're too small to actually kill us. It's a good question. You have to look at the face. You have to decide what's going on in there. Do you love me? Are you loyal? Or do you just want to kill me? These are the things that keep me up at night. Well, today we're actually going to be thinking about a similar question during Act 4, Scene 3. It's the longest scene in the play. It's also the most difficult scene in the play, so I'm glad you're here to make sure that you're understanding it as we go. The scene opens with Malcolm and Macduff, and remember that Macduff has fled to England. Malcolm fled to England earlier in the play, so here we are in England. And Malcolm says, "Let us seek out some desolate shade, and there weep our sad bosoms empty." And Macduff says, "Let us rather hold fast the mortal sword, and, like good men, bestride our downfall and birthdom. Each new morn, new widow's howl, new orphan's cry, new sorrows strike heaven on the face, that it resounds as if it felt with Scotland, and yelled out like syllable of dolour." Okay, what in the world are they talking about? Well, look at Malcolm's suggestion. He said, hey, what do you want to do on our little play date here? Let's go find some shade under a tree and cry. And Macduff has a different idea for their play date. He says, let us hold fast the mortal sword and like good men bestride our downfallen birthdom. In other words, let's grab our swords and let's go defend our downfallen birthdom. They're from Scotland, so that would be Scotland. And then he points out that each new morn, and this gives us a clue as to how things are going in Scotland, every new morning, new widows howl, new orphans cry, new sorrows strike heaven on the face. If you have new widows, that means men are dying. If you have new orphans, it means parents are dying. People are dying in Scotland. Now Malcolm says, what I believe, I'll wail. What no, believe. And what I can redress, as I shall find the time to, friend, I will. What you have spoke, it may be so, perchance. This tyrant, whose sole name blisters our tongues, was once thought honest. You have loved him well. He hath not touched you yet. I am young, but something you may deserve of him through me, and wisdom to offer up a weak, poor, innocent lamb to appease an angry God. All right, this definitely requires our understanding here. As Malcolm says that going back to the start of it, he says, what I believe, I'll wail. So whatever I'm thinking, whatever I believe, I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to say it loudly. I'll wail it. And then what I know, I'm going to believe. So basically, he's just going to empty his thoughts right here. He's going to be open. And he says here that what you have spoke may be true, all this bad stuff about what's going on in Scotland. But then he also points out that this tyrant, which would be Macbeth, was once thought honest. We once thought that he was an honest man. It turned out not to be. And then he says, you've loved him well. In other words, you've always been friendly to Macbeth, and he hath not touched you yet. Nothing's happened to you yet. Dramatic irony here. We know that something did happen to Macduff, but they don't. And then he says, I am young, but something you may deserve of him through me, and wisdom to offer up a weak, poor, innocent lamb to appease an angry God. Who's the angry God in that metaphor? It's Macbeth. Who's the innocent lamb, the poor innocent lamb that might be offered up to the angry God? That's Malcolm. So Malcolm's suggesting that perhaps Macduff is actually here for Macbeth and is here to try to bring him back to Scotland, lure him into some sort of trap. And Macduff is offended. I am not treacherous, but Macbeth is. A good and virtuous nature may recoil in an imperial charge. In other words, Macbeth is treacherous, and your good and virtuous nature, which you might have, might recoil or go away when charged by the king, when ordered by the king. But I shall crave your pardon. That which you are, my thoughts cannot transpose. Angels are bright still, though the brightest fell. So he says, beg your pardon, sorry for calling you a dirtbag, but whatever you are, my thoughts won't change. My thoughts cannot transpose you into something that you're not. And then he refers back to angels are bright still, though the brightest fell. The brightest angel was Lucifer, and he fell and became Satan, the devil. And so he's saying that the other angels are still bright, even though that happened. That might be analogous to how Macbeth was once a thane and was the brightest thane and fell, and now all the other thanes are, Malcolm says, I guess the other thanes could still be good, but he can't really tell. Though all things foul would wear the brows of grace, yet grace must still look so. And here's the conundrum. He says that if anyone was foul, anyone was bad, that they would wear the brows of grace. Their face is the brows refers to a part in the face, would show grace. Their faces would look really nice. Yet he realizes that's exactly how people who are good would also look. He can't tell the difference. He is the son of Duncan. He can't tell the difference between someone who's good or has good intentions and someone who has bad intentions, at least not based on the face. Macduff says, I have lost my hopes. His hopes were to bring Malcolm back to fight against Macbeth, and now here he is, and Malcolm won't trust him. Perchance even there where I did find my doubts, why in that rawness left you wife and child, those precious motives, those strong knots of love without leave-taking? It's a good question. I pray you, let not my jealousies be your dishonors, but mine own safeties. You may be rightly just, whatever I shall think. He's trying to kind of cool things down and trying not to be too offensive. In other words, don't let my suspicions of you make you feel like you're dishonored. It's just for my own safety. Bleed, bleed, poor country. Great tyranny, lay thou thy basis sure, for goodness dare not check thee. Wear thou thy wrongs, the title is afeard. Macduff is saying to the country, to Scotland, go ahead and just bleed. Just continue bleeding, because you know what? Tyranny, you can lay yourself out well, because you're going to be here for a while, because goodness dare not check thee. Goodness won't come and oppose you in any way. Fare thee well, Lord. I would not be the villain that thou thinkest for the whole space that's in the tyrant's grasp and the rich east to boot. Seriously, cats? Okay, what did that just say? He said, so long, I would not be what you were suspecting me of being for all that Macbeth has, all the space in the tyrant's grasp, and throw in the rich east to boot, which I think he's referring to the rest of Europe. It wouldn't be enough. I wouldn't do what you're saying I would do. Be not offended. I speak not as in absolute fear of you. I think our country sinks beneath the yoke. It weeps, it bleeds, and each new day a gash is added to her wounds. So Malcolm says, wait, I agree with you. I know that what you're saying is true. I think withal, there would be hands uplifted in my right. And here from gracious England have I offer of goodly thousands. Okay, so Malcolm just pointed out that if I were to come back, I think many hands would join in and want to fight alongside me against Macbeth. And he says that England has actually offered him thousands of soldiers to go do that exact thing. But for all this, when I shall tread upon the tyrant's head or wear it on my sword, yet my poor country shall have more vices than it had before, more suffer, in more sundry ways than ever, by him that shall succeed. So wait, what was the... It sounded good there for a moment. He said, I have all these troops offered to me. I think others would rise up with me if I came back. But what? But he says when he defeats Macbeth, when he has his head on his sword, he thinks his country shall have more vices than it had before by him that shall succeed. Well, Malcolm would succeed in that scenario. So what is he saying? Macduff says, what should he be? It is myself, I mean, in whom I know all the particulars of vice so grafted that when they shall be opened, black Macbeth will seem as pure as snow, and the poor state esteem him as a lamb, being compared with my confineless harms. What? This is the beginning of the world's worst job interview. Malcolm being asked about being king, and what does he say? He says that he would be worse than Macbeth. He says he'd be so bad that Macbeth would seem as pure as snow, and people would consider him like a lamb, like an innocent weak lamb compared to the harms that Malcolm would have when he's on the throne. Not in the legions of horrid hell can come a devil more damned in evils to top Macbeth. Malcolm says, I grant him bloody, luxurious, avaricious, false, deceitful, sudden, malicious, smacking of every sin that has a name. By the way, avarice means greed. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. But there's no bottom, none, in my voluptuousness. What does that mean? It doesn't mean he's really curvy. Read on and we'll see what he means by voluptuousness. Your wives, your daughters, your matrons, and your maids could not fill up the cistern of my lust, and my desire, all continent impediments would overbear that did oppose my will. Better Macbeth than such an one to reign. So what did he just say? Yes, exactly what we thought he said. He said that he was sex maniac. I don't know. He said that all of your women, your wives, your daughters, your matrons, your maids, it wouldn't be enough. So it's better for Macbeth to reign than someone who's like, just a total hornball, I guess. Macduff says, boundless intemperance in nature is a tyranny. It hath been the untimely emptying of the happy throne and fall of many kings. Boundless intemperance is a nice euphemism for saying being a sex maniac. It has been a problem for their kings before, and it has led to their downfall before. But fear not yet to take upon you what is yours. You may convey your pleasures in a spacious plenty, and yet seem cold. The time you may so hoodwink, we have willing dames enough. There cannot be that vulture in you to devour so many as will to greatness dedicate themselves, finding it so inclined. What did Macduff just say? He said, fear not to take upon you what is yours. In other words, take all the women you want. And he also says, you may convey your pleasures in a spacious plenty and yet seem cold. In other words, you can go ahead and have all the women you want and yet seem like you're not that kind of player. And then he says, we have willing dames enough. Oh, think about how many women would want to be with the young king. So, Malcolm says, with this there grows in my most ill-composed affection such a staunchless avarice that, were I king, I should cut off the nobles for their lands, desire his jewels and this other's house, and my more having would be as a sauce to make me hunger more, that I should forge quarrels unjust against the good and loyal, destroying them for wealth. Again, the bad interview continues. Not only is he super hornball, but apparently he's super greedy. Again, avarice means greed. And so much so that what would he do? He would take everybody's stuff. He would just take everyone's stuff, and then that more having would be as a sauce to make him hunger more. It would just make him want more stuff. Until basically he would start fights and quarrels with people who were good and loyal just to take their wealth. Macduff says this avarice sticks deeper, grows with more pernicious root than summer-seeming lust, and it hath been the sword of our slain kings. Okay, Macduff says, oh, that's a bigger problem. Apparently our stuff means more than our women do. Macduff, you're not really, winning in 2020. And he says this also has been what's brought down many kings before. Same thing. Yet do not fear. Scotland hath foisons to fill up your will of your mere own. All these are portable, with other graces weighed. We got lots of stuff, and you know what? We'll give you lots of stuff. That's fine. All these are portable. They can move from this person to you. That's fine. As long as what? With other graces weighed. Other graces, as long as we can take in all your good qualities. But I have none. The king becoming graces as justice, verity, temperance, stableness, bounty, perseverance, mercy, lowliness, devotion, patience, courage, fortitude. I have no relish of them, but abound in the division of each several crime, acting it in many ways. Nay, had I power, I should pour the sweet milk of concord into hell, uproar the universal peace, confound all unity on earth. Really? So every good grace that a king would need to have, everything that you'd want in a leader, he has none of them. In fact, instead, he would just destroy all peace on earth if he were in power. Wow. Macduff, what do you say to that? Oh, Scotland, Scotland. If such a one be fit to govern, speak. I am as I have spoken. fit to govern? No, not to live. In other words, Macduff says, you think you're not just fit to govern? You're not even worth living. You're such a dirtbag. My goodness. And then he turns and he's going to speak to the nation. O nation miserable, with an untitled tyrant, bloody sceptered, when shalt thou see thy wholesome days again? Since that, the truest issue of thy throne, by his own interdiction, stands accursed and does blaspheme his breed. In other words, you've got this bloody tyrant right now, that's Macbeth, and when are you going to see your wholesome days again? Because the truest issue of the throne, the one who's supposed to be on the throne, accuses him, blasphemes his breed. In other words, his breed would be his family line, and he's blasphemed his breed here by speaking so poorly of himself. He's a shame on his whole family. And then he turns to Malcolm and says, Thy royal father was a most sainted king. The queen that bore thee, oftener upon her knees than on her feet, died every day she lived. That means she prayed a lot. She was on her knees praying, I promise you. Fare thee well. These evils thou repeatest upon thyself hath banished me from Scotland. O my breast, thy hope ends here. So Macduff just gave up on Scotland. He said, it's banished. What you just said has banished me from Scotland. I'm not Scottish anymore. I have no country. Okay? I have no hopes of saving Scotland. And now Malcolm says, Macduff, this noble passion, child of integrity, hath from my soul wiped the black scruples, reconciled my thoughts to thy good truth and honor. It's an important sentence. What in the world does it mean? This noble passion is the speech Macduff just gave, and he says that it hath from my soul wiped the black scruples. Okay, in other words, there were these dark spots on his soul, these sins on his soul that he just mentioned to us. And what did it do? It wiped all those out. Hearing that speech wiped all those things away. And it reconciled my thoughts to thy good truth and honor. In other words, I now believe that you, Macduff, are truthful and honorable, that you're not here to lure me back to have me killed. Let's explain. Devilish Macbeth, by many of these trains, hath sought to win me into his power, and modest wisdom plucks me from overcredulous haste. But God above deal between thee and me, for even now I put myself to thy direction, and unspeak my own detraction. Here abjure the taints and blames I laid upon myself for strangers to my nature. In other words, devilish Macbeth, he's done this before. He's sent people here to try and lure me back into a trap. And so I have to be wise and not hasty in what I do. So this was all a little game that Malcolm was setting up to find out whether or not he could trust Macduff. But now he feels like he can trust Macduff. Because why? Macduff gave up on Scotland. If Macduff was hired to come bring Malcolm back to Macbeth, and Malcolm said Malcolm suggested he would be worse than Macbeth, Macduff still would have brought him back. He'd been like, it's okay, I'll teach you all the king stuff on the way. Let's just get into this, into this carriage and go. But he didn't. He gave up on Scotland, which showed that his true intention was to save Scotland, was to help Scotland. So that's how Malcolm knows that he can trust him. He is the son of Duncan. He cannot read faces, but that doesn't mean he can't figure out whether or not someone's being truthful. Now he says he'd like to unspeak all of his detractions, all the things he just said about himself. He wants to Control-Z, undo all of that. I am yet unknown to woman, never was forsworn, scarcely have coveted what was mine own, at no time broke my faith, would not betray the devil to his fellow, and delight no less in truth than life. My first false speaking was this upon myself. Okay, Malcolm just said a lot of things. Apparently he's super pure. Like, as bad as he just sounded, he's actually that pure. He's a virgin. He's yet unknown to woman. So he's not a hornball. He scarcely covets what's his own. He's like, I don't even like my own stuff. I don't want anyone else's stuff. I'm not a stuff guy. And he would never betray a devil to his fellow. He would never betray someone to someone else. And ultimately, he loves the truth. And his first time he's ever lied, he's never lied in his life. The first time he ever did was just now to Macduff. That was his first try, and he was pretty good at it. Anyway, what I am truly is thine, and my poor country's to command. Whither indeed, before thy here approach, old Seward, with 10,000 warlike men already at a point, was setting forth. Now we'll together, and the chance of goodness be like our warranted quarrel. Why are you silent? Okay, so he just, by the way, not only do I undo everything I said about myself, also Seward, the English general, has already given me 10,000 men, and we're ready to go into battle and go fight in Scotland. So, hey, why are you being so quiet? Macduff is shocked. He just went from giving up on his own country because there is no hope to finding out everything was completely opposite. Such welcome and unwelcome things at once, 'tis hard to reconcile. It's time for a snack break. I want you to go do 5 jumping jacks, get yourself a snack, pause the video, come right back.